Hello, this is Tami, Plays Well with Paper, for Whimsy Stamps Halloweeners design team. Today I'm sharing a card I made with the new NoFuss Instant Masks exclusively from Whimsy Stamps. You get 4 sets of the same mask in each package and they retail for $5.99. The masks are laid out exactly like the stamp set they coordinate with, so they're easy to find and pair up. The set I'm working with today coordinates with the Got Peepers stamp set, and I'll also be using the Wavy Pierced Rectangles die set for this card. I'm excited to get started making with the NoFuss Instant Masks. I began by cutting an A2 piece of distress watercolor cardstock, put that on a stamping platform or whatever stamping tool that you have, and I started by stamping the small cat that is sitting. I wanted that to be in the front, and then behind it I wanted the jack-o'-lantern treat carrier. So I stamped that. I'm stamping in black soot archival ink, and now I'm going to mask the treat holder because I want some things to be behind it, and so it needs to be masked off so I can stamp some kitties behind it, peeking out from behind. You can see that I repositioned that one because I didn't get it exactly perfect. I will say right now, while I am auditioning these kitties, as Nancy would say, to see where they're going to go, I am not well versed in masking, and so I didn't do this perfectly, but I'm really happy with the outcome. So I just stamped the 2 cats. The larger one is supposed to be peeking out from behind the candy container, and the little one that I'm masking now is supposed to be standing on the handle. And then I added the sun and the clouds up in the top corner. And now it's time to start blending, getting that background color on there. So I am going in with a blending tool and some broken china distress ink, adding that first over the masks, and you can see they're not moving or shifting at all, which I thought was amazing. You can also see that I cut it out with the wavy rectangles. And after the broken china, I added some uncharted mariner, and then I finished it off with chipped sapphire around the very outside edge. And now it's time to go ahead and remove the masks and see if they really did keep all of the ink out or if anything seeped under or something like that. So I thought I was going to have to use something to peel these off at first, having not used them before. And so I got this little scrapey tool, and then I realized that I really didn't need it after I did the moon and the clouds this way. It ended up kind of causing the mask to separate. None of it did anything to the stamping or my card base. My card base was absolutely fine. It just made it a little messier taking it off than it needed to be. And all I really needed to use, I figured out after that, was my fingernail, and they would come off perfectly fine. So I made an easy job fussy, and I didn't need to. So I made the mistake for you. As you can see from there, all you need is just a little bit of a fingernail and you can pull those right off. So I'm taking the handle off, and there you go. You can see that the moon and the clouds and the cat, they all were masked perfectly. And here's the first little kitty from the beginning. And actually, because these were kind of attached, the masks were kind of attached because these cats were stamped in front of and behind, it all kind of came off together in one easy peel. And there you go. I was really so surprised. And like I said, the image underneath came out perfectly. There was no problem at all. You will see if you look closely that I have some areas that I didn't get the masks in place exactly. And again, that's my fault for not being very well versed in masking. It's not a technique that I do very often, so that was my fault, not the mask's fault. They worked perfectly. And like I said, they held up to a lot of ink, both archival and distress, as well as that blending tool, and they didn't shift at all, and nothing soaked underneath or seeped underneath. I was really impressed with how these performed. Now that the background was finished, I wanted to add color to the images. And I decided to use my Distress watercolor pencils. I do not have any Copics, and so I am always so impressed with people that can do the beautiful coloring with those, but I'm not one of them. So I just used my limited palette of Distress watercolor pencils. There are only a few oranges, and among them are Spiced Marmalade and then this darker one, which is Crackling Campfire. So I kind of used the darker one on the shadow areas, and then for the ears and the nose, I used Tattered Rose. It's kind of a peachy pink. For those big peepers eyes, I used Crushed Olive. It's a yellowy green. For the eyes and the mouth and the nose on the jack-o'-lantern, I used a couple of the yellows. There's mustard seed and I think wild honey for the darker edges of the eyes. I'm using some spiced marmalade for some stripes on the candies, a little bit of Dusty Concord purple, and I used some crushed olive after I did the eyes. I put some crushed olive in there and bringing in a little mustard seed for the bottom of the candy corn and a few other stripes on some of the candies. And that's Seedless Preserves. It's another purple. And then I got out my watercolor brush, and you want to make sure it's not soaking wet, but just wet enough to make those colors vibrant. And then that's pretty much all you get to see because my battery ran out. So here is the completed jack-o'-lantern, kitties, the moon, and the clouds, and it is ready to do the finishing touches. So I found a card base that I made last year as when I was making some cards for the Halloweeners design team last year, and I had a bunch left over. So I decided that it would be the perfect base for this little NoFuss Instant Mask card. So I thought maybe I would go back and show you how I made that background. So here is a little bit of my tutorial from last year. I took the Scratchy Plaid background and I covered the whole thing with Wild Honey Distress ink. Then I went over every other line with the edge of the Spiced Marmalade Orange Distress ink. So every other line both ways, just with the edge of it. And then using the Crackling Campfire, I went over every other line with the edge of the Crackling Campfire ink pad. And I was trying to put ink on in a way that I thought that Plaid would go when you make a plaid. I got some water, I sprayed some water on it, and then I just took the front of the card, the whole card base. I wiped the ink off of the edges with my Inky Binky, and then I used my little stamping tool to press it down evenly, and that was the outcome. I dried it, and I really loved how those turned out. Now I had some that I made with the Distress Heavy stock and some with watercolor paper, and this one is the watercolor one, so it has a white background. Now I realized I needed a sentiment for the card, so I cut the smallest banner from the Shaker Maker banner die set, and I stamped the Trick or Treat sentiment from the Got Peepers stamp set, and then just attached those in the top left corner. And here is the outcome of the card. I think it turned out really well. I'm sure that some of you who are really good at masking can see some of the mistakes that I made, but overall, I'm really happy with this card. Thank you so much for watching this tutorial. If you enjoyed it, would appreciate if you left a like and a comment on the video. And be sure that you're following Whimsy Stamps YouTube channel and their other social media platforms so you don't miss any of the upcoming releases or any of the amazing inspiration.